Hi, it's Jane with the Compassion Project, and I am so excited today to be here with Michael Larson. Michael is an incredible man, Winnipeg, Manitoba, where he lives with his partner Heather and their two beautiful daughters. He is heart-driven and passionate about what he does, and he is determined to make a difference in the world. He is a teen, parent, and family counselor at Life Upgrade, and he's a certified life and parent coach. And him and I were talking before we came on, and I said that I wish I had a parent coach when my kids were little. We all need a parent coach. Michael is highly qualified. He has a bachelor's degree with a major in criminal justice and conflict resolution. And in 2006, he ran a level 5 specialized treatment foster home, where he parented teenage youth that were involved in the justice system. I think that's amazing. This is when Michael realized that he had a natural gift to connect with youth and help them feel safe and secure. And now he's using that gift to give back, and that's where his career is. So he has developed a 12-week powerful parenting program where he helps parents to connect and build healthy relationships with their children. Welcome, Michael. I am so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that kind introduction. I appreciate that.
Michael has so many more certifications I didn't even mention. There's a list of what he has done. And I think it's so cool when someone can find their passion and turn it into a purpose. And it truly is what you've meant to do. So now we can all use help, especially during the pandemic.
Yes, it's a very hard time for a lot of people.
It is. So I want to start with a bit of your story and what drives you to make a difference. Like maybe when you were a teenager, if you had struggles, and what led you to taking this path.
All right. I won't go too long into detail into the story because the stories can get long. But yeah, if I think back to my youth, I grew up in a small town, so like 1,000 people. So when I say small town, I mean small town, like in the country. Parents came from like farming family, and people farming, right? So like small town. So when I think back to small town, like my childhood was okay. Like obviously there were some ups and downs. My parents were involved, and I played lots of hockey, lots of sports. But what I found when I look back to early childhood, what there was a lack of was in school or in home, right? 80s, 90s, a lack of talking about emotions, a lack of talking about how to interact, communicate. And as a young boy in a small town, I was receiving this message like men need to be tough, men don't cry, boys don't cry. So when I look back, I found myself getting into like fights and stuff at school and into trouble. But I didn't know at the time, but when I reflect back, what was happening is I didn't know how to express myself with words. I didn't know how to do this. And when I was hurt, when someone hurt my feelings, I would go into my stress response, that little brain, the amygdala, fight, flight, or freeze, and I'd get into fights and stuff, right? And then in my town, fighting was not seen as a big deal. That's just kind of what happened, right? Boys will be boys kind of stuff. So fast forward to my teenage years. Grade 7 was a hard year where like my friends just turned on me. Sometimes high school, junior high, you lose your friendship group. That kind of, when I look back, messed with me in terms of trust and ability to trust others. And then fast forward to about when I was about 18. And then my grandma died, and I didn't know how to process that. And I was close to my grandma. Once again, I wasn't crying, I wasn't grieving. So then I just ended up in this place around 18 to 21. Just ended up drugs and alcohol, and just doing things, and one thing led to another, and I was just struggling because I was hurting on the inside. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what to do with my life. I had all these emotions, but I wasn't crying, so I was just angry all the time. Just angry. I felt angry, and I was fighting and all this. So I was negatively coping. Is when I look back, that's what I was doing. So around that time, I moved to the city of Winnipeg. That's where I am now. So the closest city to my small town. So I made the big move, 45 minutes. To University of Winnipeg, not knowing what to do. I just knew I had to do something. There was some pressure I was feeling from do something with your life, right? You're just kind of, I wasn't doing it. And then I'm like, I'll be a phys ed teacher because I'm like, I'm pretty good at sports. So I went to school to be a teacher, not having a drive, no passion. But this is where I needed a part-time job. So I was looking at like working at grocery stores, different things, Blockbusters, if you remember Blockbusters, that was a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
So I applied all these places. Then I had a friend who said, I work at a group home and I can get you hired there. And I'm like, what's a group home? And didn't hear anything about it. So that what a group home is child and family services. So youth who can't live at home for a variety of reasons that are in the system are placed in a home to live, and there's staff there. So I was hired at 21 years old, no clue what I was getting into, to work in this group home. I needed a job. And that's where things kind of came to an interesting point when I look back. I was going through all these personal struggles, right? Then professionally, I was introduced to these youth who had these horrific backgrounds, trauma. Their stories were just heartbreaking. And then I had this aha moment when I look back of like, if I'm struggling so much with my stuff, and it wasn't an easy childhood, and then these kids have a harder situation, right? No wonder they're struggling. No wonder they're in and out of jail. No wonder they're really struggling with drugs and alcohol. No wonder they can't stay in school, because their home environment is chaotic. It's horrible. So I really, it made me think that like, we think that we all have the same opportunity, but we don't, right? Our path
Yeah.
is very determined from childhood. Our environment, you talk about nature versus nurture, the environment shapes us from childhood, who we're going to be. So that's when I switched my degree from phys ed teaching into criminal justice, conflict resolution. And then since that point, since 2006, it's what I do. Human behavior, learning, reading about it, working, personal, professional life. This is my passion.
Wow. I think it's amazing. And it's easy to look back and see, oh, that's what I needed to do to lead me to where I am now. But I also think what's fascinating is that if you look at just you and I, like you say, you had a pretty good upbringing, but you still end up with trouble and how to express your emotions. And I had a really good upbringing too, but I went through terrible trauma as a teenager. I went completely sideways because my own parents were dealing with their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to deal with anything. And I think if you just look at you and I, how many families are struggling? And now with the pandemic, I just feel like it's crazy, but I get really emotional because I feel like if a family that's pretty healthy and is struggling, what is happening to the families that are already dysfunctional or struggling with communication?
Yeah.
What's happening in the pandemic,
It's all amplified. Either situation, right, is going to be amplified in a negative way. And the problems that are there are going to be worse now. And you're bang on there, Jane, is that, our parents, sounds like your parents saying, I know they did the best they could. Could they have done things more effectively? Yes, we all can. But the common theme is trauma, right? Is that trauma and unprocessed trauma. So when we have traumatic events happen to us, if we don't have a parent or a close relative or friend or someone to talk to unload this traumatic event, this emotional pain, cry, let it out, go through the healing process, it just stays within us. And it, like you said, it leads to negative situations as a teen in our early 20s, right? That's what happens, is we kind of start making negative decisions to cope with our emotional pain.
Yeah. So how can parents learn to parent effectively rather than emotionally? Because I know it's a big part of what you do. And when I read that sentence, I thought, that is so powerful, because I'm a grandma now. I raised 2 daughters, and they're amazing, but not without teenage struggles. I remember those years. But now I have grandchildren. I still get emotional and have trouble when the beautiful little Maurice, 6-year-old, cries and wants something. And I still see, even as a grandparent, more emotional. So how would someone start or learn to be more effective than emotional? How do you make that switch?
Well, number one is acknowledging to yourself that you're making errors when you emotionally parent. That admitting to yourself and admitting out loud that you no longer want to emotionally parent, instead of just saying, well, I try my best and life is hard, so I try not to yell, but I just end up doing it anyways. That to me is you're acknowledging there's a problem there, but you're not going into it to change it. So the first step is to realize that I want to change how I'm parenting. So if you lay there and you're guilty about interactions with your kids at night and you have a hard time sleeping, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that. That's a good sign that it's time to do some work and to figure out how to look into emotional intelligence and become aware of our own emotions, our own triggers. And often when we yell at our kid to tie up their shoes, it has nothing to do with the shoes. It's because we're late, we're stressed, we're in an anxious state of mind, and we're just projecting our own state onto our children, and then we're expecting our children to be perfect and do everything right, so then they don't make a mistake that triggers us. So we have to be aware of our own emotions and willing to do work to change ourselves.
It's interesting because, yeah, if you look at how you feel, because you, as a parent, you could get up one day and just be feeling fantastic and everything's great, you're getting along with your husband, everything's fantastic, and then you could have a situation with your kids and handle it a certain way. But then another day you could wake up and have a bad day because you're feeling down. Your kids don't know, and you lash out because you aren't feeling
Yeah, exactly.
good.
So
Wow.
it's kind of, I call it hurt tag. So basically you live in your home, you're hurting, you're upset about something, you end up taking it out on your kid. That kid they're hurting now, they're going to take it out on their sibling or maybe back on one of the parents. And it's just a cycle within the home of people being, mean to each other. But it's not being mean, it's just that we're upset, we're stressed, we're anxious, we're scared of something, we're angry, we're sad about something. But instead of expressing these emotions and communicating as a family, we're just taking our stuff out on each other. And then before we know it, sometimes we end up in the situation where it's like you find yourself coming home from work and you don't even want to go in the house. You're just sitting in the driveway because you're like, I don't want to go into that chaos. But it didn't happen overnight to get to that point. But we can get out of that if we start to look at our emotions and how to communicate with one another and use empathy and to apologize, right? As parents, we need to apologize. Anytime we take our stuff out on our kids or we emotionally react instead of respond to them, we need to apologize. We need to repair that hurt, that harm that we did.
Yeah. So, and communication, I guess, obviously is key, even with little kids. So my grandson's 6. So, and looking at I think my daughter is doing an amazing job. I feel like she's so much more patient and in the present moment than I was. So I think, would it have to do with being aware of your thoughts then? Like what you're thinking about before as a parent?
Yeah, so I like what you just said there, how you're watching your daughter and she's parenting with more patience than you were. And that's the goal, right? It's not for people if they're watching this or listening to my stuff. I'm not saying that you're a bad parent or people are doing things bad to their children. It's you're doing the best you are with the tools you have, but then you're going out and stopping the cycle. So your daughter is more patient. It sounds like you had more patience than your parents probably had. So if you see generationally, if we just work on ourselves and our weaknesses, we can pass down our strengths to our children, but acknowledge weaknesses to our children and just explain to them that nobody's perfect and talk about strengths and weaknesses and just have open communication with our children. And the best way to role model talking about emotions is say, hey, earlier when I was upset, it wasn't about you. I was upset. I was stressed about this. I was sad about this. And I took it out in the wrong way. So what I need to do is co-regulate myself. So you teach your children that about ways to co-regulate with each other, like maybe a hug, maybe coming to ask for help with something or simply saying, I'm sad. Or then you teach children how to self-regulate. So like as an adult, if you are upset and something that makes you feel good is journaling or something that makes you feel good, go for a run, you talk about this with your children and you explain to them these are tools to use when we go into our little brain and we're feeling overwhelmed. This is how we get out of it. And this is how we don't make mistakes and hurt each other when we're in our little brain.
Yeah. Because I know the power of the early years and the impact it has on your brain, like children from, they say 0 to 7, because you're forming all those subconscious habits and all the pathways that you don't remember as an adult, but if you could, lots of us have to go back and heal those pathways from when we're young. So if parents could start, what would be the best thing for parents advice when you have young children? Because I always look at it now as, and I just think of my daughter and little Maurice, and she has Kyla too, who's one or 15 months old. But you're to look at them like you're raising adults, like you're raising children, but you want them to, they're going to become an adult and they're creating behaviors that is going to be hard to break.
Yeah.
Like if you form a behavior, because it is the parents are creating the environment, right?
Yeah.
So if you're creating a behavior with your child, he's going to take it into teenage years.
Yeah.
Because we know how hard it is to break our own habits.
Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden you have a teenager who's not listening or is on screen all the time and won't get off because there's no rules in place. Like, how important is it at the young age to set the boundaries and rules on something like screen time? Because a lot of people in the parents in the pandemic are struggling with that. Like, my kids are having too much screen time. Like, what advice would you give to controlling that?
In terms of screen time?
That's just an example, yeah.
Well, with anything, the pandemic, when I've been talking to parents and stuff, is reminding them that this is like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, none of us have gone through this before, so no one has a pamphlet or a textbook on how to parent in a pandemic. But for me, the things that I teach parents is the same tools we use in a pandemic. The only difference now is we may have heightened stress. Our children have heightened stress. We're both losing things, so we're grieving. So stress, grief leads to, once again, emotional dysregulation and a tendency to make emotional decisions opposed to stop and pause. So in terms of screen time, I've been telling parents, like, if they're using double as much as they used to, that's probably okay, because you have to be adjustable with the new norm, right? But you just don't want to give a free rein, because I think sometimes in the pandemic, people thought it might be 1 or 2 months. So we'll just let our kids do whatever, and we'll just make it through it. But now we need to realize this. Who knows how long things are going to be different and stuff. So we have to set up a new norm. So you in terms of screen time, if your kids are using too much, you just have to simply sit down and explain, hey, we're in this pandemic, and I was really stressed, and you were stressed, and we just started using screen times, and all of a sudden now we're at a point where things are out of hand. So we got to work together now and go back and kind of reverse what happened. And now we have to sit down, hit a reset button, and let's make a plan. Let's talk together about how much screen time is healthy, how much of this is healthy, and then teach your children why things are important. Teach them self-discipline. And I'll say it again, we need to role model. So if we're sitting on our phone all day, how can you tell your kid to not sit on their phone all day? It doesn't work that way. Lead by example.
It is so true. And I think it's hard in this generation, I think harder than ever with screens, because we are on our phones. And I try really hard to, other than taking pictures, to not be on the phone, and with the grandchildren, just give that present moment.
Yeah.
But the little one, she's already sees people on their phones and she wants one. Like, it's just right. But so you're saying that even, say, with a 6-year-old, to sit and have a conversation, like, I think giving the young children that they have a voice and that they can actually help make a plan, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's screen time is the same as nutrition, sleep, anything. That's what discipline is. And if you look at a home, as parents, we get misled what discipline is. We think it's punishment and consequences and forcing our kids to do things. That's not what discipline is. Discipline is teaching self-discipline. So as a parent, if we pause and think, what am I trying to teach in this moment? Why am I restricting this? Why am I going to potentially take this away? Because you're trying to teach healthy habits. So at a young age with a 6-year-old or whatever, before you introduce an iPad or a phone, you're going to sit down and have conversations about this device is addictive. You might not understand, but you're setting that tone. Those conversations, they're absorbing. You're leading into other conversations. So you're teaching and letting them know that it's all about balance, right? Devices can be a great tool if we use them in a positive way. They can also be a negative tool and lead to tons of problems if we don't use them in a healthy way.
Right. And I do think, especially during this time, that parents also need to give themselves grace and be like, they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
A lot of parents, and I know, have commented on a recent post I did that they're really struggling with not having time for themselves because, there's so many things that have been canceled, sports, and like sleepovers with friends and play dates. And now the moms are not getting that time to themselves, and they're feeling the level of stress is high because, and I know this, you have to take care of yourself first.
Yes.
Somehow you have to fit in that time for yourself. but I think that's what's making this time in the pandemic so difficult. Like exhausted moms, like, oh, are you going to get up an hour earlier so you can meditate? I mean, it's such a difficult time.
It is a difficult time. And I think what happened for a lot of people too, and I'm not trying to sound judgmental, is they were living lives before that were so busy and go to school, pick up the kids, work, activities. No one was actually spending time in the house together. So all of a sudden we went to a very small amount of time, actually family time and interacting without just moving on to the next thing, clean this up, go to this place. Then all of a sudden we went to the other extreme where we're at home, no work, no school, right? Depending where we are now, it could be same thing. And then you have all this time together. So it's trying to, and then you think you have all this time, but to yourself, but you don't because everyone's in the home together. So yeah, it's about parents figuring out as a team again, sitting down with your kids and saying, let's figure out the next tomorrow and throughout the day when we're going to spend time together, connecting, and when we're going to spend time apart. And teaching our children from a young age that time alone, time apart is healthy. It's not necessarily healthy to have to spend 24/7 together. Obviously, age dependent, but having those conversations and saying it's important for us throughout the day, and you have to pre-schedule, pre-plan, right? Make a plan with your kids of like, this is the hour we're going to be together. This is the hour we're going to be apart, but we'll come back together at this time. Don't worry. And then teaching them and, reminding them so they come banging on the door. Just another gentle reminder. Hey, no, it's not time yet, but, hang in there. That kind of stuff. Just figuring out creative ways, right, to get that alone time the best that we can, because it is needed for sure.
Yeah. Wow. So how do you think the pandemic is affecting teens? I think about parents with teenagers right now, and because the teenagers would feel stressed, they'd feel fear, loneliness, because isn't it such an important age for them to connect with their peers? And isn't that a big part of a teenager's growth, is connecting with their peers? And now they're so limited. Are you finding that like it's really, what's the biggest struggle for teens? Is it stress?
I think the biggest struggle for the parent-teen relationship is, if you think back to being a teenager, or at least for myself, you almost think you're invincible, right? Like you don't think of death, you don't think of sickness, and that's kind of nice in a way because you don't worry about these things. So right now you have all these teenagers that are maybe not following the restrictions or are fighting with their parents because their parents are like, you have to stay home to be safe. And like, no, I don't, because that peer connection is overpowering. It's more important to them than safety, right? In terms of the COVID and stuff. So right now there's a lot of parent-child clashing in terms of that kind of stuff, right? Because now there's extra rules upon the rules that were there before that were already straining the parent-child relation. So this teenagers are like feeling more controlled, more isolated, like you said. So it leads to anger, it leads to loss, and then they're emotionally trying to figure things out. And as the teenage brain, research proves, and in my experience living with teenagers for many years, their emotions are intense, right? Often the word moody is thrown out, but it's not moodiness. It's just they feel intense emotions the way the brain's developing. So happiness is like super high, sad is super low. So that's what's going on, and they're not choosing that. Their brain is doing that to them. So as a parent, you have to have empathy. You have to really try so hard to put yourself in your child's shoes. And what are they going through? They're going through the exact same thing that you are. So all the stress you're feeling, they're feeling that. And then, so that is the balance, right? Is we're feeling upset that our teen's doing this, but they're feeling the same way. So how do we meet in the middle as a parent and a teen and figure it out together?
I think back to when my daughters were teenagers, and it was pretty good. They were good girls, but there was issues. And I feel like if I could go back and what I've learned, I did kind of learn something along the way, but if one of them was really upset or emotional, I always, as a mom, felt like I wanted to fix their problems.
Yeah.
I was a fixer. I was like that, and I would react emotionally, and I would be like, oh, you live in this beautiful home, and you have this, and and then they would get worse, and then I couldn't deal with it. So then one day, I read a lot of books, and I read something really powerful, and I was like, I just need to go and hold space for them. I just need to be there and say nothing.
Yes.
And I tried this one day. I just want your opinion. Do you think this is effective? And it was just an emotional thing, as a typical teenager, upset about something. I can't remember even what it was. So I went down and talking to one of my girls, and it was so hard for me to just say nothing and just be there for them. And I'll never forget, it affected me so much because she was upset about something and I wanted to say stuff and then I said nothing and she stared at me waiting for me to come back at her. And she said nothing. And I mean, she's looking at me and I'm like, and I just waited, this silence, this awkward silence. And all of a sudden this weight just, shoulders went down and she's like, and just said, I love you and I'm just lonely or whatever it was. I'm just using an example. And we hugged and I was like, whoa, the power of me saying nothing.
Yeah.
And just letting the teenager know that I'm here. I hear you. I see you. You are important.
Yeah.
But I don't need to fix their problem. Do you agree with that they need to be given, like, that they can handle it, but you're there for them?
What you just said there was an example of beautiful parenting right there. Powerful parenting, as I call it. You recognize that you were doing some things that necessarily weren't working. So you went out, figured out some new ways, and you said, I'm going to try something different to look for a different response from your daughter. And lo and behold, you did that and you got a different response. Silence is perfectly fine. As a parent, we often, and I'm a big talker, like I talk a lot, and I focus on your child should be talking just as much as you or more anytime you have a conversation. And they're not necessarily looking for you to fix things or tell them what to do. The biggest strain on a parent-child relationship in the teen years is your teen's coming to you because they just want someone to vent to. They want someone to just to listen. And they're telling you this, and then 2 seconds in, you're like, well, I wouldn't have done that. Why did you do that? Well, criticism. You're not listening with curiosity as a parent. You're listening in a critical way, like, oh, I can't believe you did that, or I wouldn't have done that. Your child isn't asking you to fix their life. They're not asking you to tell them who to be friends with or who to date. They're just wanting someone to listen to them. Just like us as adults, we just want people to listen. We want to be heard, like you said. We want to know people care. And that is the biggest kind of shift that parents need to make is listening. Silence is okay. And just let your teen express their problems to you. Because if you're not giving them that safe space, they're going to their peers with those problems, or they're talking to strangers online about those problems. As a parent, you want, and I think for me, and most parents want, you want to know what's going on in your kid's life. Too much time, teens are living a double life because they're scared of their parents' reaction. They're scared of getting in trouble. They're scared of being blamed. They're scared of being shamed. So the parent doesn't even have a clue what they're doing in their life. And it's no good because the teen that great relationship is fractured.
Yeah. And I think it's a skill to learn to listen effectively, and know that you, especially as a mom, I mean, you don't have to fix everything.
No.
And that listening, I also heard something good about listening is that you can repeat back what they say to you. Like if a teenager comes to you and says, I'm really upset because my friends left me out of this, and instead of being like, oh, why did they leave you out? Did you do, you say,
Yep.
Oh, so your friends left you out of that. It must be, and they feel heard then because you repeat it. I've heard that's a really good skill if you have to say something.
Paraphrasing. You're paraphrasing and returning back what they said. So you're just these skills. Yeah, it's what it's all about. Like I've spent 15 years working on these skills, and now I'm at the point where, someone like a child could be in full out, like violent, like punching walls, doing that. I can go in and within a few minutes, they're coming down because I just know, because fine tuned, but I just know what to say. I know when not to say something. I know how to send them a signal that I'm safe and I'm here to support you. Because if your teen comes to you in a crisis, if they're upset, like you described earlier, they're in that stress response, in that amygdala, in that little brain. They need something to bring them down. So as a parent, if you meet them like trying to talk to them or trying to, like we said, they're going to escalate even higher. So the key is to verbally give them signs, but also non-verbally. We want to sit down. We want to be relaxed. And we just want to show them that everything's okay. And then we got to wait for our kid to come down, have that emotional release. So then we can talk about it. Then we can reason.
So if you are dealing with a teen that is, like you say, can be really in a state or whatever, so is that what you do? You just come in and be present? You're just like, hey, I'm here?
Well, yeah, it's not that, it's like I said, it's not that simple. It takes years of practice, but you want to verbally and non-verbally, anybody, it's crisis intervention. You want to show them that you're not there to attack them. You're not there to criticize them. You're not there to punish them. You're there to support them.
Right.
You're there to help. When somebody's in crisis, anybody, they don't want to call somebody and then be told, like we just said a minute in, well, you could have done something differently. That's the worst thing that someone can say to someone. So why do counselors exist? Why do coaches exist? Why do therapists exist? Because 99% of us don't have family and friends that actually just listen. That we don't have family and friends who are neutral and aren't giving us advice based on their own interests. They're not trying to steer us in a predetermined direction. So when you think of parenting, that your kid needs to know that you're not trying to control them. You're not trying to force them down a certain life path. You're just letting them develop their own personality, their own way of life, and you're helping them. So to circle back to when a kid's in crisis, I'm sending a signal to that kid right away that I'm not there to punish them or tell them they're in trouble or you better stop doing that or else. I'm not there for any other reason than to help and support. And if I sit there and you don't need my help and support, I'm just going to sit here.
Yeah, that's the power of just being present in the moment with them.
Yeah.
Not judging anything, just being there. And that's what so many of us need now too, is just knowing that we need connection. We need to know people are there and care about us. I just want to put this up because someone put, I find it difficult when you know your son is struggling but doesn't verbalize what he's feeling. So would it be that it's okay? What would you say to that?
Well, and I'm not saying I don't know the situation. I have to talk to this parent, but what often happens is you hear this from parents quite a bit. Oh, my kid doesn't talk to me. They just go to the room there or whatever. But have we provided that safe place? So how have conversations gone in the past? Has your child learned that when they come to you with a struggle that you end up maybe, like we just said, are you criticizing? Are you actually just listening? So a teenager or a child is not going to open up to you unless you have a safe, secure place, unless you're effectively communicating, unless you're effectively connecting or talking about emotions, teaching about emotions. So maybe this son doesn't even know how to verbalize what he's feeling on the inside because nobody sat down with him and taught him about emotions and what our brain does and how to express stuff. I don't know, but there could be lots of reasons. But there's usually, as the parent, we got to change what we're doing to get different results.
Interesting. And I used to find that when I would want to talk to my kids about something, the teenagers, they would no. When I was trying to be almost like a little bit like finding out why they're upset, and but then there was moments when I would be busy and they want to talk. So it's like drop everything and listen. Like when they're in that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's good. You got to be, when they're ready you have to make yourself available. And that's another key. Sometimes we think our kids aren't available. They're not talking when we want them to talk, but they'll talk when they're ready. Sometimes kids need time. And there's nothing. And if a kid goes to the room, that could be self-regulating emotions. It could be also numbing them out. It depends on the situation.
Yeah. Well, I think the same person put it's hard to listen when nothing is being said. True. That's why maybe sensing when they're in the mood to talk, I guess. I don't know. It's so still just being there. We have to be there.
Well, I'll give this tip. It'll help. The 5 R's. Doesn't matter
the
how old your kid.
R's?
5 R's. It doesn't matter how old your kid is or in any relationship. So if something's going on with your child, your parent alert good. So maybe they're yelling, maybe they're fighting, maybe they slam something down, maybe they're putting their head down. So the first R is to recognize that something's going on, that your child, something's going on for them, that you need to help. Number 2, as a parent, you choose to effectively respond. So the second R is respond instead of emotionally react. Because as soon as you emotionally react to your kid, game over, they're shutting down or they're going to yell back at you. So you choose to respond. You go up, you recognize, you go up to them. The third is regulate. So you're like, I need to help regulate their emotions. They're showing me that they need help because they're emotionally upset. So I'm gonna offer to regulate and help them through relating. So the 4th R is relating. I'm gonna say, hey, like it looks like you're in a bad mood, and I don't know exactly why, but it really sucks when we're not feeling so good. Like maybe you can tell me what's going on. If not, just let me know. And what can I do for you? If you don't want to tell me, what can I do to help? So you're relating, you're regulating. Then the 5th R, and this is, you don't do this ever until the first 4 are done, is reasoning. So reasoning is if you're going to give them advice or you're going to give them a lesson, you're going to teach something. You never do that until those first 4 R's are complete. So the regulation piece, that could happen 3 hours later. You might have to practice this patience as a parent, that you don't have to solve everything or fix everything, like you said earlier, in the moment. The conversation could be the next day, the reasoning part of it. It takes time to regulate, to relate, have our emotions to show our child that we're ready to help when they're ready. So if we practice those 5 R's, that's going to help huge. And then what it comes down to is controlling ourselves.
Okay, that was really good. That was really good. So I think we could talk for hours. We'll probably end it there, but I want people to know how they can reach you, because if someone does have a teenager, but you work with parents and the teenagers, not just the child, right? Because you want to coach the parents.
Yeah. So what I'm doing now, so with my business, so yeah, powerful parenting program. So what I do now is I used to, like, I was a teen counselor, child counselor for years. Now I'm focusing on parenting because once again, it's the environment, right? If a teen's struggling mental health, yes, they can go to a therapist, they can go to this, but something in the home needs to shift. Not saying it's a parent's fault, there's other factors, but the parent needs to do something different. The home environment needs to shift. So if someone comes to me and says, my teen's really struggling, I'm saying, okay, I will work with your teen if you work with me as well. So what I do in my program is I will work with the parent, and then I can work with the teen. And then at some point in the program, we come together and I work with the family. So I work individually. I give different parenting skills, so then the parent can lead the way. Then I work with the child to ask what's going on there. And then it's almost like mediation and like family counseling, bringing that parent child back. And how do we help? How can I help them repair their relationship and move past the problems? So yeah, I do a powerful parenting program. That's what I've been focusing all my energy on. And it's going very well. So if you're a parent out there and you need some help, like, I can definitely help you solve your problems, no doubt in my mind.
Okay, so we'll definitely put the link for that Facebook group in the comments. Can people just join the group on its own?
Yeah, I have a group that is, so my powerful parenting, connecting and building relationship with kids is my group with my partner. She's a therapist, and that's free. Like, that's we give free. I post videos, we respond. It's a group, a parenting group, so people come in there and we have a community, and that's just free. That's giving free value to help people. And once in a while, I'll post things about my work, so then people can work with me if they need extra help. So yeah, the group, I'll post the group. Anybody can join it. And the group's going well. It's just a place to, because too often in other groups, someone will write something and then there's like 100 comments. So I was, how can someone really learn from that? It's information overload. So in our group, it's trying to just keep the focus on these foundational parenting skills, because they will work in any situation.
Okay, perfect. So we will, and then people can reach you at the My Life Upgrade. Is that where they find the course?
Yeah, I got a website there. Yeah, I can put that in the link. Yeah, that's where you can find out more about my course. You can just Facebook message me. I'm on YouTube now. So.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just ask you one last question.
Okay.
I think I probably know the answer. But what is the impact you want to leave on the world?
I want to know, like, when the day comes, or I'm on my last days and I'm going to die, I want to know that I tried my best to be the best version of myself, and also to lead by example for my children about giving and giving to others, because the impact I want to be is I want to help people. And I happen to be a specialist in parenting, but anybody can help other people. We all have different gifts. We have different specialties. So I want to, that's what I want to help people discover. I want to work with people and help them kind of remove some stuff, and then they can find their own path and then wake up happier.
You're amazing. I'm blessed to have met you, and we met through the Compassion Project, which is amazing. And yeah, I think this was awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. We will put the links in the comments, and then people can find you. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And maybe we'll have you on again, Michael. I think we could talk a lot more. Okay. Bye.